and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 116. And the title of this episode is, What Do You Need to Make an Economy Collapse? Well, of course, more debt. And we see in the stock market, the high-frequency traders and the plunge protection team has kept the stock market above in the positive zone. And we see gold being pushed up around $40 or so, and now we're above 1,300, and it looks a good possibility that they're going to smack this down tomorrow, and because it just went up way too fast, up $40, and we might see this being pushed down tomorrow, and to bring us back to close to around 1,200, 1,290, 1,300, because they don't want gold rising too fast. People will start realizing, that the collapse is coming, and that's a real indicator of why is everyone getting into gold. So they're going to definitely, probably smack that down tomorrow. Let's get into the economic collapse news, and we see all around the world that things are just terrible. The euro area government debt rises to a new record high. It's around 92.2%. And we're seeing that, Greece is 160.5%, up from 136 a year ago. Italy is at around 130%, up from 123% a year ago. Portugal, 127%, up from 112% a year ago. Ireland is at 125%, up from 106% a year ago. And Spain is at 88%, up from 73% a year ago. And Netherlands is 72%, up from 66% a year ago. And we're seeing this all across Europe, and it really reminds me of the Great Depression, when Europe was in this deep recession, depression, and the United States, the people in the United States had no clue what was about to happen. They looked at the stock market, they saw it was at all-time new highs. The government, the news agencies were telling everyone everything is great. We're coming out of the roaring 20s. This is fantastic. There were signs that people were unemployed. You saw food lines for bread. You saw tent cities being set up. But for the majority of the public, they really didn't realize what was going on. Today, it's even worse because you don't see any of that. You don't see any bread lines. You don't see pretty much of anything. And all you see is the stock market moving to new highs, the S&P, the Dow, everything going well. And gold is being smacked down. So when people look at it, people aren't buying gold anymore because they don't need the disaster insurance, as Ben Bernanke says. That's why you have gold. So, to everyone around the world, everything looks great. But when you look at Europe, you see things starting to crumble and fall apart. Greece may have to leave the Eurozone. A European economist says, and for them to receive more funds, Greece must stick to the agenda of either transferring or laying off thousands of civil servants, and including Athens municipal police, teachers, schools, security personnel by the end of this year. So for them to receive more debt, they need to get rid of people and make their unemployment higher. So they need to put people out of work and make these people not receive an income. So these people now cannot go out and purchase goods from stores, so sales will be less, to receive more debt so the government can make more interest payments and cover the interest payments on the debt they have already received. And right now, I mean, look at this. The unemployment level in Greece right now is around 27%. Now think about it. They're going to lay off, get rid of more people. So what is this going to do to the unemployment? What? It's going to bring it up to what, 30%? And even the younger people who are coming out of school, looking for work, the unemployment is at 62.5%. So for the government to receive more debt, they're going to lay off more people, cut jobs. So these people will not give back to society. The unemployment rate will go higher. They will receive their money. The people who are at the higher level government will be happy because they get to keep their jobs, their salaries continually coming in. They don't have to worry. And when that money starts running out, they're in worse shape than they were before, because all they did was pile debt upon debt upon debt. Now their interest payments are even larger, so now they need even more money. But to get this more money, they're going to have to lay off more people. And it's a cycle that will never end, and it only ends in collapse. And if it was a normal business, it would be bankruptcy. If it was a family, it would be bankruptcy. And this also says, 1 out of every 5 Greek workers is currently unemployed. So if you know 5 people, one of those people is out of work. Banks are in shaky position, and pensions and salaries have been slashed by up to 40%. So how is this getting better? It isn't. They're just prolonging the pain. That's all they're doing. It's like taking a drug addict and continually giving him the same drugs, and eventually what happens? The drug addict ODs. The same thing's going to happen in Greece. Now, in Cyprus, since the wonderful bail-ins and the bailouts, the public debt in the first quarter of 2013 accelerated to 86.9% of GDP, an increase of 12.6%. Cyprus received a $10 billion euro bailout from the European Union, plus they also took the bail-in from the banks and robbed the people of their money. The people still are under capital controls. Nobody can open up accounts. Businesses are afraid to go into Cyprus. So what is going to happen to Cyprus? It's going to look just like Greece. There's no difference there whatsoever. Now, in Italy, they are having their own problems. As you know, on July 9th, S&P downgraded Italy's sovereign credit rating from BBB plus to BBB, and which is a negative outlook with a negative outlook. And a report came out by the ISTAT, and it revealed on July 17th that about 4.8 million people, or 8% of the population, are grappling with absolute poverty, meaning they are unable to afford the minimum acceptable living standard. In 2011, 3.4 million people reported to be living in the poverty level. So we're seeing this continually rise. And now we see Cyprus, we see Greece, we see Italy, we see all those other countries that their debt has been going up. Portugal, Ireland, Spain. And talking about Spain, Spain will be forced to borrow from Social Security Fund to pay pensions. Spain's government is so insolvent, it was just forced to borrow from its Social Security reserve to fund pension payments. Unemployment and retirement costs deplete government funds. The government turned to the fund for 3.5 billion euros on July 1st, then for a further 1 billion euros on Monday. And virtually all the welfare cash and at least 97% of the Social Security pension fund is invested in Spanish government bonds. So Spain and all these other European nations are really feeling the pain, and they are so close to collapsing. They are doing everything and everything to stay afloat. And, we're seeing this spread all across Europe, and it's even happening now in America. As we know, Detroit declared bankruptcy, and the pensions are not safe in Detroit, but there are many other cities here in America that are on the brink of pension bankruptcy. And here are a couple. Philadelphia, unfunded liability of $9 billion, only 1 year before the pension accounts are emptied. Chicago, unfunded liability of $44 billion, money runs out in 4 years. Boston, $7.5 billion, money runs out in 4 years. Cincinnati, $2 billion, money runs out in 5 years. Jacksonville, money runs out in 5 years. New York City, $122 billion, money runs out in 6 years. Baltimore, $3.7 billion, the money runs out in 7 years. Detroit, $6.4 billion, the money runs out in 8 years. And Fort Worth, $2 billion, money runs out in 8 years. So we can see that most of these cities are having their own problems like Detroit. Now, many companies are reporting and they're missing their revenue and earnings. McDonald's is one of them, and of course it's due to the weather. If it's too sunny, if it's rainy, it's cloudy, windy, this is why companies always, miss their earnings. But there are other companies, Kimberly-Clark and Hasbro, and there are more companies that are reporting, and most of them are missing their earnings. Now, why are they missing their earnings? Well, if unemployment is 7.6 like the government says, that we shouldn't be seeing any of this, because the unemployment rate has continuously gone down, gone down, gone down, gone down. But if we use the real calculation, the one prior to 1994, we see that unemployment is around 23%. Even if we use the U6 that the government uses, it's around 14%, and it's continually moving up. And most people who are underemployed are just barely getting by. Where someone might have been making $80,000, now they have to work 2 part-time jobs. Now that's counted as employed, but instead of $80,000, they're only making $50,000. So they're just getting by and using the money just to live. No extras, nothing like that. And that's why we see retail down. That's why we see all these companies showing earnings down. And when you have people not working, people are not going to spend. Now, the economy can't do well when the country's young people aren't doing well, and there was an article that says only 27% of college grads have a job related to their major. So these people are coming out of college and they're not even getting jobs where they went to school, to learn, and they thought they were going to get a job in this field, but there are no jobs. So instead, they're working as a part-time person in McDonald's, a part-time person in Walmart, or a part-time person in another company that has nothing to do with their college degree. Because in reality, there are no jobs. And among the young people, the unemployment is approaching like between 40 and 50% here in America. And this is very similar to the Great Depression for young people. They don't end up homeless, because when you get out of college, you're 22, 23, or if you went for your master's, you're a little bit older, like 25, 26. But you have to remember, most young people are not out on their own. They're living with their parents. So you don't see them as drifters. You don't see them trying to find work. They just live with their parents, making no money, and the parents are supporting them these days. And this is how it went. Back in the Great Depression time, you were 22, 23, you were on your own. You were finding work. You're out of the house. You were probably married already, probably already had one kid or two at that time. And you don't see that today because most of the people still live with their parents. We're seeing a lot of reports that, and this has been going on for a while, that a lot of the kids live with their parents until they're 30 because I hate to say it, with inflation, I know there's not supposed to be any inflation, but there is inflation. With inflation and salaries not keeping up with inflation, the amount of money that you make when you graduate, or if you don't have a college degree, the money that you make when you first start working, you really can't afford much. Now, what else is going on here? Existing home sales are falling, and they've fallen the most in 2013. I mean, we mentioned this before, where the mortgage applications have took a really huge dive. The interest rates on mortgages are starting to go up, and this here is report. And we can't forget about the people who are unemployed or underemployed, or they have their homes in foreclosure. We have to remember the Fed is still buying around $45 billion every single month of toxic real estate loans. So if real estate is really getting better, none of this would be happening. So we see existing home sales drop by 1.2% month over month, the biggest drop in 2013. They thought it was going to be a 1.5% rise, but they saw it drop by 1.2%. And the inventory of homes are rising to 5.2 months of supply versus 5.0 in May. And you can see just from the mortgage rates, from the decline of the mortgage applications, from people being unemployed or underemployed, and the Fed still buying all this toxic real estate. Real estate is starting to reflect what is really happening. And with the mortgage applications taking a dive, sales decline are starting to follow now, and that's what we're seeing. Now, central banks told to back off by biz. And this article goes on to say governments around the world, including the UK, have been warned in an influential new report to stop relying on their central banks to kickstart growth. And basically what they're saying is that, all this stimulus and the central bankers being the market for everything here in America, the Fed being the stock market, the Fed being the housing market, the Fed being the student loan market, the Fed being the treasury bond market, this is not a real economy, and it is a virtual economy. And it goes on to say, without these forceful, undetermined policy responses, the global financial system could have easily collapsed, bringing the world economy down with it. So we know for a fact, when the central banks stop their virtual economy, everything will collapse, because the economy by itself cannot sustain itself. It's impossible at this point, and they know it. But they're basically screwed. They don't know at this point what to do. And the only thing to do is to create all these draconian laws to try to control the entire situation when the entire world economy, I should say entire world Western economy, comes crumbling down. And this is why the governments are working so hard to take away the people's rights, to create these organizations that will control the people, to have these FEMA camps set up, to spy on the people, to create lists of who is going to give them problems. All of this is being put into place because they know eventually they will not be able to sustain this, and eventually it will come crumbling down. What they are trying to do is they are trying to start a world war to cover this entire mess up, just like they did during the Great Depression with World War II. That war covered up the entire collapse of the Great Depression, which was not getting better. It was getting worse. So here they are doing the same thing, but this is on a larger scale. And this article goes on to say, without these forcible and determined policy responses, the global financial system could have easily collapsed. Oh, I read that already, sorry about that. But easy financial conditions can do only so much to revitalize long-term growth when balance sheets are impaired and resources are misallocated on a large scale. Central banks have borrowed the time that the private and public sectors need for adjustment, but they cannot substitute for it. In its main economic review for the year, BIS points out that since the beginning of the global financial crisis, robust self-sustaining growth still eludes the global economy, and governments need to use different mix of policies to achieve it. I hate to say it, but the governments have no other mix of policies. The only policy they have is there's going to be a collapse, and we need to control the people. That's it. That's all they got. They got nothing else. Okay, let's move on here. Now, British Prime Minister admits that Syrian government is stronger now. Assad is beating the rebels. The paid mercenary fighters that the U.S. government has paid is losing ground. The Syrian forces are beating them, and the U.S. government and the UK, all the countries that are backing these paid mercenaries, are finding themselves backed into a corner. The war in Syria that they've been working on since 2011 is going absolutely nowhere. Syria and Iran, they do not use the US dollar as the reserve currency. They do not have central banks. It's the job of the empire of the United States to maintain every country use the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency, but they are losing this battle. The central bankers are losing this battle, and more countries are not using the reserve currency. And as these countries stop using the dollar has no place to go except back to the U.S. And when these dollars flow back to the U.S., this is when we will see inflation. But the UK Prime Minister Cameron pledges not to arm bad guys in Syria, and he goes into this that they're afraid that these weapons are going to fall into the hands of the bad guys, and he even admits that and acknowledge that these groups include a lot of bad guys. Some of them, he's saying, that aren't even Syrian, which we know. I would say 95% of them are not even Syrian. These are paid mercenary people which is a small group which is paid by U.S. government agency to overthrow the government of Syria, and it just isn't working. And they're finally realizing that this plan that they had, that worked in Lebanon, that worked in Yemen and all the other countries, it worked very well. Here, it is not working. And the Pentagon went on to say that Syria war may take years. There's no way it's going to take years because the collapse is coming. This is a lot of BS that they're throwing out there. They are going to do something to get this war started big time. Not with the rebels, but with the U.S. going in to Syria and Iran with Israel. Even though that Russia and China are backing Iran and Syria, this will bring the war to the next level, which they need to cover up the collapse. And just like I said in the last thing with the biz, telling the central bankers, you can't be the markets, you need to lay off. They know what's coming, and this is why there was all this talk about tapering, and they know eventually if they taper, there's a collapse. If they don't taper, it's a collapse. No matter which way you look at it, it's a collapse. Now, very interestingly, U.S. and Israel launch a joint aerial drill. The United States and Israel have begun a joint aerial drill, according to a statement by the Israel military. The 2-week Juniper Stallion 13 aerial exercise began Sunday morning, and an undisclosed number of F-15 and F-16 fighter jets from both sides are participating in this training event, and they are training just like all the other countries for this eventual war. And I know a lot of people are like, no, this is just a simple training exercise. This is what they always do. They are purposely training right now because this war will be coming. I mean, if we look back to World War II, oh no, Germany only went into Poland. It's not a big deal. Oh, Germany only went into, and people kept on saying that until they were invading England, until they were invading France. I mean, it's the same thing. People make excuses, but all of this is being set up and built up for the eventual war. And we can see this in many different instances. I mean, we saw the drills off the coast of in China with Russia, with Japan. Japan and the United States were having drills. South Korea and the United States were having drills. We're seeing this all over the place. And now the U.S. military drone surveillance, it's expanding to hotspots. And what they're doing is they're shifting the huge fleet of unmanned aircraft to other hotspots around the world. The Obama administration is reducing the number of drone attacks in Afghanistan and Pakistan and in Yemen because they realize they don't need them there anymore. They don't need to kill the innocent people anymore, and they need to, redirect these drones to the places where the wars are going to start escalating. And of course, they're saying that they're using and they're sending these drones to hotspots to look for drug runners, pirates, and other targets that worry the U.S. But we know what this is for. They're flying the drones over North Africa to make sure that all the natural resources, the gold mines, the natural gas, and everything there is kept in check. They're flying over the Middle East with these drones to make sure and keep an eye on things there. They have drones flying over Asia and the Pacific to keep an eye on there. Because interestingly enough, Japan and China are disputing over the island, and they're having their drills and they're flexing their muscles out in that area. In the Middle East, we have Syria and Iran with Russia and China, so we have drones over there. In Northern Africa, China and other countries are fighting over natural resources in North Africa, especially the gold that's located over there. And we're seeing this happen all over the place. And the Pentagon has also set up drone bases in Ethiopia. I'm going to try to pronounce this word, Djibouti and Seychelles. And we see this happening all over the place. Okay, let's move on here. Now, in regards to Obamacare, I don't know if any of you remember this, but President Obama came out, and if you got a doctor that you like, you'll be able to keep your doctor, Obama said. And the president, he said, here's a guarantee that I've made. If you have insurance that you like, then you'll be able to keep that insurance. If you got a doctor that you like, you'll be able to keep your doctor. Nobody's trying to change what works in the system. We are trying to change what doesn't work in the system. Well, it has come out that the HHS, which is the Health and Human Services, they recently added to their website, can I keep my own doctor? And it says you might not be able to keep your doctor under Obamacare. What the president and what all these people have said is going to be the total opposite, and I've said this so many times. It's always the opposite of what they say. It is never what they say. And when they say you can keep your insurance, you can keep your doctor, this is going to make it better, this is not going to, your insurance premiums are not going to go up. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, it is the complete opposite. It is going to be a complete nightmare. Now, Congress is finally going to limit the NSA spying reach. And I hate to say this to Congress. Where the hell have you been? They've had no clue that spying was going on, that any of this was happening, even if they did have a clue. And that's even worse because it completely violates the Fourth Amendment. And according to Marbury v. Madison, the particular phraseology of the Constitution of the United States confirms and strengthens the principle, supposed to be essential to all written constitutions, that a law repugnant to the Constitution is void, and that courts, as well as other departments, are bound by that instrument. It doesn't matter. What the NSA is doing is illegal. Period. They should be brought up on charges. Everyone that is involved should be brought up on charges. The end. That's it. That's how it is. Now, there was something very interesting on the whitehouse.gov site with respect to the Bill of Rights and the First, Second, Third Amendment. And it's very interesting what they wrote there. They kind of changed them around a little bit. And I have the link on this page, on the x22report.com page. If you scroll down to my page where it says Obama White House, the Second Amendment gives citizens the right to bear arms, you'll see a link there that says Constitution. It's the first sentence there, and there's a link that says Constitution. You can go to the whitehouse.gov and see this for yourself. But I find it very interesting. Now, I have the Bill of Rights on the people, which is the way it's written, and then I'm looking at the Bill of Rights on the United States government site. Like, for instance, this is what it says on the... Let me read you the Bill of Rights of the Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. This is important. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, this is what it says on the whitehouse.gov. The Second Amendment gives citizens the right to bear arms. Not the people, the right of the people. It says gives citizens, making it like the government is giving the right. And they left out shall not be infringed. They left out they left everything out. And I said, okay, maybe it's just the Second Amendment. Maybe that's what it is. Okay, let's look at the Fourth Amendment. So I'm going to read you the original Fourth Amendment. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue, but upon probable cause supported by the oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. So over here it says protects citizens from unreasonable search and seizure. The government may not conduct any searches without a warrant, and such warrants must be issued by a judge based on probable cause. Now, it doesn't say anything about people to be secure. And first of all, it says citizen again, and it also says protects, where the government is protecting, where if we want to, we can unprotect. But it also leaves out that people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches. So it's very interesting how they're changing everything. The Fifth Amendment says provides the citizens not not be subject to criminal prosecution and punishment without due process. The original, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime, unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb. They have rewritten the amendments. This is my whole entire point here. And you can go look at them, and what they're doing is they're chipping away at their rights and making them into privileges for citizens. This is their goal. This is why you see the NDAA, the Patriot Act, the Miranda exception rule, and every other, and the spying, because they are trying to rewrite the Constitution. They're trying to show that the people have no rights. Okay, let's move on here. Now, Mike Rogers, who is a representative, he's a Republican of Michigan, and he goes on to say, Chinese government-backed hackers have cost the United States nearly $2 trillion in lost and stolen property that was seized through illicit internet attacks. The theft of information and technology by the Chinese constitutes the largest transfer of wealth illegally in the world's history, according to Rogers. He goes on to say that we are in a cyber war. Most Americans don't even know it. They go about their lives happily, but we are in a cyber war today. Countries such as Iran, North Korea, and Russia have used these same tactics to wage a secret cyber war on the United States. This is what Rogers is saying. The Russians and Chinese, for instance, have the ability to implant malicious codes into the U.S. electrical grid. If they ever needed to, they could shut this off, prompting mass chaos, Rogers warned. Iranian government-backed hackers, for instance, have aggressively pursued probing actions on our U.S. financial institutions, he said. This action is unabated and ongoing. So what is happening here is they are completely setting up for this main event cyber attack. Now, representatives are bringing this into Congress and making statements that this is serious, we are already at war, it's China, it's Iran, it's whoever they want this to be from. North Korea, they said, and they're letting us know that they could shut the electrical grid down at any moment, and the financial institution and banks can be completely wiped out any second. This goes back to my point that these cyber attacks will indeed be the main event. It will be the doomsday false flag, and if everything fails that they're trying to do with removing our rights, confiscating the guns, passing the gun bill, the UN Arms Treaty, and CISPA that are pending in the Senate, bringing us to war, if all this fails, they are going to fall back on this cyber attack. And be sure, I mean, let me tell you, when it hits, it will be bad. It is a cyber Pearl Harbor. If you go back to Panetta, who said this, if you go back to Janet Napolitano and DHS, it is an act of war on the United States and on the world, because This will not just happen here. You will see this happen in many places. Listen, everyone. Thank you for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.